What is cracking, everybody? It is Man here, and welcome to another Games Matter giveaway event. Today I will be talking with Ian Stoker about his game Scapegoat 2. Now, Ian is from Magical Time Bean, which I believe is a one-man dev team. So, Ian, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Alright, so why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do at Magical Time Bean?
So yeah, that's just kind of like a company name, so I can not pay so much in taxes. It's really just me. However, Scapegoat 2 is the first time I've actually like partnered with other people to make a game, and one of them is in the chat, lurking. But yeah, so it is technically a one-man studio, but I do not make games single-handedly anymore. I would say I'm way too spoiled by like not having to do the art myself and that sort of thing.
That's right, but you have made a couple of games previously in the past, such as the original Scapegoat, as well as the Spellcaster series. And were those on your own, or did you work with someone else on those as well?
Those were solo projects. So if you take a look at screenshots, you could be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That looks different.
Alright, so if anybody in chat has any questions for Ian while we were showing the game off today, feel free to post them in chat or send them to Ian's Twitter, that is at MagicalTimeBean, and we'll get to any and all questions that we possibly can. Also, if you would like your chance to win a copy of Scapegoat 2 and Scapegoat 1, be sure to talk to Indie Gamer Chick on Twitter. That's at Indie Gamer Chick. She'll be giving away copies of Scapegoat 2 and copies of Scapegoat 1 for Steam, as well as later on tonight, we will be giving away a copy of the upcoming PS4 version of Scapegoat 2. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to stay in chat and follow all of those lovely nonsensical things. So, Scapegoat 2, what is it?
Oh, that's a question for me, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. It's been a while since it's been weeks since I've demoed this. So the autopilot of just, my 30-second pitch for the game is kind of rusty. It's a puzzle platformer. You play as a goat. You have to escape from one room to the next. It's kind of inspired by the old school single screen puzzle games back on systems before like scrolling was invented. And even on systems that had scrolling, like on the NES, there are games like Adventures of Lolo, and they're all kind of based around like a grid-based puzzle where you learn what these basic ingredients do, and then you have to use that knowledge to manipulate the room and find a way to the exit.
So I did unmute the game here so that the people in chat should now be able to hear the game. Of course, if there's anything going with the volumes, if Ian's too loud or Ian's too quiet, I'm too loud, I'm too quiet, game's too loud, game's too quiet, let me know in chat. Volume's the easiest thing to fix when it comes to streaming, so I'll do the best I can to accommodate everyone. And unmuting the game reminds me of the really friggin' awesome soundtrack that Scapegoat 2, and even the Scapegoat 1 had by itself. Now, is that soundtrack made by you as well?
Yeah, I've actually been doing computer music longer than I've been programming or designing games. That was actually how I got my start in games, was doing contract game audio. So it was like kind of over the last 10 or 12 years, learned how to program and experimented with game design. So that was kind of my in, believe it or not.
Because Scapegoat 2 it's got a really interesting sound to it. There are only a handful of games I can think of off the top of my head that have a unique sound where every track just feels like they belong together. And the Scapegoat series is definitely something where I hear the music in Scapegoat 2, I automatically think that's from Scapegoat 2. There's probably nothing else that can be from besides one of the Scapegoat games. So that's something you did very, very well.
Well, thank you.
Alright, so we're going to get started here. I am actually going to create a new game. I do have a game that I was playing before that's actually really far in the game, so we might get back to that a little bit later, show off some of the later levels. But for now, we're going to do a new game right off the bat, so I don't have to worry about trying to do puzzles I've never played before online, because that could be hard to do. So let's start a new game and get on with what's going on here. Now, this game does have a little bit more of a story than the original Scapegoat did. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, part of that is like collaborating with people who are better storytellers and at least, like more concerned about story than I am. It's like, I hate to say this, but it's always been something that's not a strong point and kind of even an afterthought in my games to have story. I'm working on that. And I don't know, Randy helped a lot by writing and kind of revising a lot of the NPC dialogue in the game. So yeah, it's not really something that you would play for the story necessarily, but I hope it's enough there to get people engaged in the world and thinking, a little bit more about immersion.
It really works because even in the original game, the fact there's not a lot of the story there really helps make the world you're taking place in, this weird temple world where everything's inside, feels more mysterious, at least in my opinion, since you're not quite sure what's going on or about everything that's happening.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hoping for, is that like in minimalist storytelling, it could kind of be more like every person interprets the game in a different way.
Something I've always loved about this series is just how the game is so mechanical. How you can press a button and it completely reshapes the level that you were in. What are some of the inspiration and ideas behind using that as one of the game's main mechanics?
That was something that, I can point to a lot of games that inspired this. Maybe the most basic one was a DOS game called Jetpack that my wife showed me and was like a childhood favorite of hers. And that's kind of the same type of thing where it's a single screen puzzler, but it's got like kind of, fun jumping and jetpacking around and collecting stuff. But the concept of having blocks that move and stack and kind of moving machinery in the rooms, that kind of just evolved. This game, or Scapegoat 1, started as a project for me to clone Jetpack. I wanted like a quick 2-week project just to take a break between doing Soulcaster 2 and Soulcaster 3. And 1 week in, I decided to just add one thing to Jetpack, which was going to be these blocks that could fall and be pushed and stack on top of each other. And that turned out to be like, once I got it in there, it seemed to really be like this. There could be a game just based around this, like just moving blocks around and being trapped in this world. It's almost like being trapped in a Tetris game or something like that, or Bejeweled. And it was an absolute nightmare for me to program. Probably 6 months later, I got it working. But it really evolved into something that I don't think there's something quite like it out there.
There's really not. There are quite a few puzzle platformers, but Scapegoat is able to do a lot of different things, even though you're still doing kind of the basic button pressing. There's thankfully there's not as much box pushing. I can't tell you how many puzzle platform games I've played that's pressing buttons and pushing boxes or pushing boxes onto buttons. So it's nice to see a lot of variance, and one of the big things that does add a lot of variance is what we just got here in the game, which is our little AI-controlled mouse friend. So talk about a little bit about what he is and what exactly he does.
Yeah, so he's another thing that just kind of appeared during development of Scapegoat 1 and became the signature like puzzle-solving utility in the game. Scapegoat 1 was made without any design document or any planning whatsoever. It was just all like worked on day by day.
You do it live.
I don't know if that's a great way to make games because like there's good and bad parts to doing it that way. One bad part is that you can feel like you're lost in the woods with no way out. So there was a really dark period where I wasn't sure the game was ever going to be completed. But one of the advantages is you can come across stuff that you wouldn't have thought of if you were just sitting there in Microsoft Word trying to come up with ideas for the game. The mouse was originally an enemy. Like I wanted to have enemies that could crawl around the edges of obstacles in the game, just like some of the enemies in Metroid, because that seemed to be a really basic thing, a basic AI to program, and something that could be used in a lot of different ways. Those enemies did become the saw blades, but to prototype and like debug their behavior, like moving around on moving objects and falling objects, I just added in a quick like press the B button to spawn one of those guys wherever the goat was, so you could test it out on a bunch of different surfaces. And for placeholder art, I just pulled the rat enemy from Soulcaster 1, and I just like had a lot of fun in the debug version spawning rats all over the place and watching them crawl around the walls. So I decided to make the spawning of NPC rats kind of like a core part of the game. And for one of the earlier versions, you could actually spawn 4 different rats, and it turned out that actually wasn't that much more useful than just one mouse companion. So by simplifying it down to just one, it could be like a single button press to send him out and bring him back. And it could also, he could become kind of like the mascot of the game. And you could talk to the goat. Like the goat doesn't say anything, but the mouse can say stuff and kind of push the story forward.
So I guess that brings up a big question, and that question would be, why a goat?
So the real answer to that is that it just really comes from the title, which I decided on the title a few months into development. It was still just placeholder art, like 3 months in, and it didn't have any sort of theme yet. But there was a Reddit thread that some friends and I found on like the best misuses of English phrases, and a scapegoat was one of the top voted ones. So I thought that would be the perfect title for a game.
Hey,
and that's why there's a goat.
Because that's what you're doing in the entire game. You are a goat, and you are escaping.
Yeah, it's very literal.
Yeah, it works out well. Actually, in chat right now, I believe you were saying we have the artist of Scapegoat 2. Since Scapegoat 1, all the art was and everything was done by you, but at Scapegoat 2, you got a couple other people to help you out. Who all did you get to help you, and what all did they work on?
So first and foremost would be Randy, who came on board for the Scapegoat 2 after, so I did a Scapegoat 1. That was all with sprite art, which is something that I can do myself. It takes me forever, but I think I do an okay job with it. And kind of like I wanted to try something new, and I wanted it to look different. And I didn't just want to make a sequel that has like the same art but new levels. So there was no way I could do that on my own. Randy and I don't remember if we were office mates at the time. I think we kind of were. We were sharing co-working office space in Berkeley, and I kind of just turned to him and said, like, you want to try making art for this? And he was like, okay. So it's kind of like a cool thing about being in the San Francisco Bay Area is this is like a nexus of game development, and talented artists like Randy are kind of like always like this is a place where you'd find that. So that's a really cool thing about living here. And we ended up working really well together. Like he's also a game designer, so he understands that everything has to serve the game and make the game readable. So like the background tiles need to look good, but they also it's more important that they not be mistaken for foreground tiles or obstacles, and that dangerous things look dangerous. And also that all this stuff takes many versions to get right. The goat is actually the 3rd complete redo. We're talking 100 frames of animation for this guy to get him looking as good as he does. I'm not terribly good at directing art. I had some really vague adjectives to give to Randy for how I wanted the goat to look, and that wasn't really getting us the best results. So I kind of just said, go nuts, just come up with something really stylized that you think would fit. And so this is what he came up with. So yeah, I could talk more about the art at some point. But wanted to mention another programmer on the team is Caitlin Gadd, who I met years ago just through actually doing doing XNA games, and she developed a thing called JSIL, which is a way to play XNA games in HTML5. Scapegoat 1 was actually ported to HTML5 and runs in your browser if you go to playescapegoat.com. That's all Caitlin's work. It's pretty mind-blowing that it runs 60 frames per second in a browser, like on a modern computer. And there were some things that I wouldn't have been able to do in this game without her help. The primary thing was the renderer. It's kind of a mutation of the default XNA renderer. There's a new, maybe like more efficient or more flexible sprite system than the sprite batch that's built into XNA. And more importantly, there's the light sources with dynamic shadows. And that like really brings the game to life, plus gets a lot of mileage out of relatively few tiles in each map, because using lighting, even on the background of this map, you can see like the same tile gets repeated a lot, but because of like the shading through lighting, it's more pleasant to look at. She also helped out with the level editor and getting that online, because the file system stuff and integrating with Steam Workshop and stuff like that, that would have taken me forever. And so it's good to have someone who's like a top tier programmer to help with stuff like that.
Right.
And finally, there's Ethan Lee, who is everyone should know who Ethan Lee is by now. He's done so many ports of XNA games to PC, and he helped us out with this one as well.
Now this particular
by
game...
PC I mean Mac and Linux. Sorry, yeah.
I was about to say, because this particular game actually originally started on PC, but the original Scapegoat 1 was a Xbox Live title before it actually was ported over. Were there a lot of differences between the original Scapegoat and the version that did eventually make it to play onto Steam? And what were the thoughts behind moving it over to Steam from the Xbox Live marketplace?
There was actually a midway point between those. So it started on Xbox Live Indie Games, and then was kind of just ported to PC in general to put on to Desura, and it was in the Indie Royale bundle, and it was on a couple other marketplaces. But the Steam thing was a very long road. Right about the time that, I spent a lot of time trying to get Steam's attention with the game. I figured since it was kind of like more of a console-ish game, maybe it wasn't something they were interested in. They launched Steam Greenlight, and then we spent exactly 1 year on Greenlight, getting the votes to get this game in. And that was actually around the time Scapegoat 2 was coming along. So both Scapegoat 1 and 2 got greenlit at the same time. Scapegoat 1 had been done for like 16 months, and Scapegoat 2 wasn't done yet. That was a really surreal thing that happened.
Because I remember playing the original Scapegoat 1. I got a copy of it to cover on my YouTube channel for the First Impression series that I do. And from what I was reading about when Scapegoat 1 got onto Steam, it got onto Steam the original time slot that Scapegoat 2 was supposed to hit Steam, but Scapegoat 2 instead got delayed back for a while until it was fully released.
Yeah, I actually don't remember what happened with the delays. Maybe Randy remembers better than I do. It's all kind of a blur. But yeah, we did have to delay. It was partly due to just we got our PAX 10 selection, and we showed the game at PAX, and that was in August. It was, it went over really well. We got a lot of good feedback, and kind of wanted to, or I at least wanted to, give it some extra time to be that much better. And so, yeah, games get delayed a lot. Ours is not an exception.
Right. So, did you feel that having to have that delay really worked in the game's favor?
Yeah, it's a better game. I mean, the gains you get from an extra few months that late may only make it 5% better, but I don't know. I think it's definitely the strongest thing I've ever made, and a few of the things we added, they weren't necessary for it being a good game, but I think might be something that would help it make, be a very memorable game. Oh, that was a clutch save at the end there.
It was
Congratulations.
really close. I have played some of these levels before, but which is a good thing because I don't have to try to think of all these puzzles live while also trying to hold a conversation. But some of these I'm forgetting because it's been a while. Now, the interesting thing about Escape Code 2 and Escape Code 1 is that they're actually very, very similar games and have very, very similar mechanics, but you do change things around a little bit with both of the games, which is nice. It's nice to see. Is there anything specifically that you wanted to have in Escape Code 2 that ended up getting cut?
There were a lot of things. Yeah, there were a few gadgets that were programmed and illustrated and tested, but the main reason that they weren't in the game was because we ran out of space. We have like 121 slots for rooms, and they're divided into 10 zones. And that seems like a lot of space, but when you think about like a lot of these gadgets, like these ice blocks in this level, they have a few characteristics. Like they get melted by fire, they can be pushed, they slide. You have to spend a level teaching the player those things, and then you can have a basic puzzle with it, and then you can have an advanced puzzle with it. So kind of each gadget takes up several levels out of the game to do it properly, and we just had one too many things. It was going to kind of collapse under the weight of it. The main thing, the most tragic thing to cut was the match 3 blocks, which were in Candy Scapegoat Saga, if anyone saw that.
Yes, I remember
think that's
that.
still available for free.
I played that, and I loved it, and I was literally just about to say that we're talking about mechanics, and we could talk, and I was literally about to talk about Scapegoat Candy Saga and how that came to be, because that was before Scapegoat 2 came out, and that was very much, originally, it sounded like it was a beta, not beta, or just a demo for Scapegoat 2, but there were a lot of things in there that unfortunately didn't make it all the way to the end.
Yeah, none of the levels in that were, in the final game, because they all were based around the match 3 blocks, these candy blocks. And it was fun to make levels with them. I could have probably made an entire game just based on that, and I don't know if the demand is there. Maybe someday that'll happen as DLC or something like that. But yeah, that was just its own thing. It was originally going to be its own zone, as these match 3 blocks were actually going to be. There's a tile set that we called Hell, which is got renamed to the Grave of Anguish as one of the final stages. And one of the earlier concepts we had was that when you get to Hell, it's like entirely match 3 puzzles. But we didn't follow through with that, because Hell had to be used for a lot of platforming puzzles instead, and the crumbling bone walls and stuff like that.
Right. Oh man, it's right there. Come on. Oh jeez. Okay.
So if I had to pick a flaw in this game, like something that I would change, I don't know if I'll want to change once it's out, but the level you're on now, trying to hit the switch, the problem with it is that it seems to a lot of players like that switch is out of reach, and they give up after a couple mouse tosses, because it really is just like you have to be at the peak of the jump to get the mouse up there. And I don't know, someday I may patch it to just bring that switch down a tiny bit, because when I'm demoing this, that's one where players get stuck a lot. And I don't think it's quite fair. I'm fine with players getting stuck, but I don't think that when they finally do that one, they're like, oh yeah, it's not an aha moment. It's like that was not the greatest thing ever again.
Right. So I remember when I first played that level, it took me a little bit to figure out exactly what I wanted to do there. But what I wanted to ask you before we completely move away from the Candy Saga Jam thing is that you could, of course, release that kind of a thing for the Steam Workshop. And how has Steam Workshop been going for Scapegoat 2?
So you're asking about like the custom levels part of.
Right. How well has this game been on Steam Workshop been, and are there any plans to maybe add some of these other mechanics that you couldn't add before the game came out as options for people to mess around with in the Steam Workshop?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things is when we made like the consumer version of the editor, we've got all these prototype gadgets in there that just like they exist in the engine, and the game can run them actually, but we ended up removing them from the editor just because they weren't featured in the game, and I didn't want there to be stuff that's not explained found in custom levels. I don't know if that was a good move or not, but that's kind of just what we went with, because I wanted to maybe eventually properly introduce them, or at least just make sure everything was bug free, because we didn't do a lot of extended bug testing with the match 3 blocks and other stuff, and how it works with other types of blocks and other gadgets. So in terms of how well it's been received, there have been some amazing levels made with it. It's like really nuts. Unfortunately, the user friendliness of the whole experience is just like, we kind of, I made the decision to not launch the game with the editor because I wanted the editor to be a little more bug-free. But there was like a few people on the forum who were just demanding the editor, and they really wanted to try it out. So I would say that I kind of rushed it to market, and it's totally usable, but I mean, it's not very user-friendly. It's something that kind of only the most hardcore players would take the time to learn and make levels with. I don't think it's that bad in the scheme of things. Like, there are worse editors out there, but I think to really encourage more level building, there's a lot of stuff we could add to the front end, both for browsing levels and rating levels and packaging them together, maybe into playlists. There's a lot of stuff that could be done that just we didn't really have time to do, unfortunately.
Right. It could take sort of the Super Meat Boy approach, like what they did with the Super Meat World, where you can actually just randomly make a whole chapter that's a bunch of levels put together. Something like that, with how Scapegoat 2 is broken up with its hub area, and it goes off on the different areas, which actually is something that's a little bit different than Scapegoat 1. Now, Scapegoat 1 only had one hub area, and you would unlock rooms 2 at a time and could take your pick to where you wanted to go. The Scapegoat 2 is a little bit more linear than that.
Well, it's kind of just disguised differently. It really is just a hub with branches coming off of it. Now, it's laid out into a 2D grid now, so you can actually kind of get a sense of a place within this tower, and you kind of see climbing up physically, like geographically, you're going higher up in this tower, and it's this beautiful stained glass window that gets filled in. And there's a good shot of it right there. But it really is just a hub that's separated out into a bunch of vertically oriented rooms that lead to individual linear levels. So same layout as the Scapegoat one. The kind of the original aspiration I had, or something I wanted to try, was like, what if you could pick your path through, and like kind of there would be branch points and alternate routes. And after messing with that a little bit, there was kind of a fatal problem with it, which was that it wasn't actually fun to find 2 different routes to the same level. That was really anticlimactic, to beat a level and then have it take you to a level you've already been to. Plus, there just wasn't a real need for exploration. Like, it was kind of just, I always wanted there to be at least 2 rooms you could try if you got stuck on one, and that was really the only necessary thing. So aside from that, it's kind of a fun aesthetic thing, but it serves exactly the same purpose as the hub and subworlds system that Scapegoat 1 has.
Something I do want to point out about this level in particular is that this level is a nightmare. It took me forever to figure out what I had to do to get through this the first time. I don't even know if I got through it initially, but it's a big bit of a change of a learning curve, which is something that Scapegoat 2 actually does very well, because you have maybe 5 levels. You actually have 5 levels per chapter, and then you can actually revisit the areas after that chapter and get more difficult levels that I have yet to beat really any of them, because they really, really charge up the difficulty when it comes to it. Now, was there a lot of trouble when it came to trying to set the difficulty curve for this game?
That's something I really spend a lot of time on, and the best way to do that is just to watch people play the game over and over. So I'd watch a lot of new people play. The first 5 levels are more important than the rest of the game put together, because that's when you convince a new player to actually keep playing. So those were endlessly tweaked and redone, and rest of the game, like the closer it is to the beginning, the more important it is to get the difficulty curve right, I think. Because later in the game, not only do you have more options of rooms to go to if you get stuck, but you'll have a lot of tools at your disposal and you'll be just better at the game. So it'll just be like not as vital to get that difficulty curve right. And so there will be more spikes towards the end of the game. This level was like kind of intentionally a difficulty spike. This was one of the ones where it's like, okay, you not only have to execute this well, but you have to figure it out. And there's a few ways to do this. There's like a YOLO way to do it, and the way you're doing it right now. This was the way that I designed it to be solved. Was like, oh yeah, you've got to like stop the fire from actually burning the wood so that it keeps obstructing the electricity. And I would say 1 in 50 players do it this way, like the methodical puzzle solving way. Most players just do the YOLO strats of like jumping, dramatically trying to avoid the fireballs and hoping to not set off a chain reaction, or at least just grab the key and drop down before it all burns.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I have against this particular level is something that's not really a problem with a lot of the other levels, but it's the fact that it's very easy to mess this up, and if you're off by just a little bit, you have to restart the entire thing. Now, there was something that when Escape Code originally came out that I saw a couple people talking about, and it was the fact that, unlike some puzzle platformers, Escape Goat actually does have failure states where you have to kill yourself and restart the level, instead of just trying to redo the puzzle.
Yeah. That's something that not a lot of puzzle games have that, because it's really polarizing. It's really tough to it adds tons of difficulty, not just for the levels where that's possible, but for the other levels, because you're always kind of questioning whether it's still possible to beat now that you know that that's the case. Like Portal and Portal 2 don't let you reach an unsolvable state. They make sure that if something goes wrong, it also kills the player. But with this, it's kind of like you have to gauge whether or not you can still do it. And yeah, that's something that I think makes the game a lot harder, and not too many puzzle games do that.
Do you feel it's necessarily a good or bad thing when it comes to the fact that not all other puzzle games use that kind of mechanic of having to reset if you're off by a little bit?
I'm sorry. So the question was like whether it was a good thing or.
It's like which do you feel is actually the better approach to take, to allow failure states, or to try to make it so that you always know if you can or can't solve a puzzle?
I think so. It limits your options if you make the game so that there's no failure states whatsoever. Like you can't make it so that the player gets trapped, or that like Sokoban is a great example of a game where you can screw yourself over. You just push the block to the wall and you can't push it from that side anymore, and you're just screwed. You can't beat the level anymore, and it's up to you to figure out if it's beatable. Now, if there's only a few moving parts like Sokoban has, you can tell pretty easily, and you know you have to restart. When there's a ton of moving parts, then it gets more difficult. I think it just depends on the type of game you're making, and out of fairness to the player, just recognizing how much more difficult it makes it when you allow that sort of thing in the game, because it not just affects the levels where you can get screwed over, but it affects all the levels, because, like I said, you're not sure if you can actually, you will be second guessing yourself along the way every time.
Now, most of Escape Goat's levels are actually fairly small. Did it take a lot of trial and error to come up with the correct size to make a level so that it's not too big to be overwhelming, but not too small that it would be too simple?
That's something that was added to the engine for Escape Goat 2, is the different sizes of levels, and that's, I think, a big strength, because like some of the levels, it's just everything has a different ideal size, and when they're very small, it's like you're just focusing on a couple things, and when they're really big, it's more of like a campaign. So a lot of the levels, especially later on, have like 4 different stages to them, and maybe 4 mini puzzles within them. So that's what the larger room sizes in Escape Goat 2 allowed for. So I think that, yeah, that's good. I didn't want to add scrolling to the game because that takes away the advantage of being able to see the whole puzzle at once. Once you have scrolling, it does allow for enormous levels, but you're going to be wondering, like, oh, what's on the other side, like what's just off screen. That was one of the things that, although I love Lemmings and had tons of fun playing that on the Super Nintendo, like that was the most frustrating thing for me, is like suddenly you would hear like all 50 of your Lemmings fell to their death, and you'd be like, what happened? Oh, well, all the way on the other side of the screen, they like, you know, fell into the water or something like that.
Right. So keeping everything to one screen is definitely, I really feel that it's a good way to go. The way all of your players have all of the information they need at once. And it's more of putting the pieces together, not the fact that you have to first find the pieces and then put them together.
Yeah, I really wanted it to be like when you reached a puzzle, you had the information you needed to solve it. When there's a new gadget, it's not going to be involved in a difficult puzzle. It's going to be something that demonstrates how it operates, and then once you're forced to learn how it works, then you can expect to see it used in a puzzle.
Alright, I think I actually finally beat the library. I have to say, the library is one of the more difficult sections, areas in Escape Goat 2. And there are actually a couple areas from Escape Goat 1 from Escape Goat 2 that remind me a lot of Escape Goat 1, to the point that Escape Goat 2 for a long time feels a lot more like a remake of the original title than necessarily a sequel, until you branch out into a lot of the new mechanics. Was that something that was done intentionally to help players get more used to, like they first came from Escape Goat 1 and then they go to Escape Goat 2, they would be very familiar with the experience before you start adding in a lot of different mechanics?
No, I assumed that everyone playing this game had never heard of Escape Goat before. So I wanted it to be something you could just start with. And for that reason, I think it was probably a mistake to have a 2 in the title. We could have called it like Escape Goat anything. But the 2 probably, I think a lot of people mentioned on forums, like, do we need to play the first one, like, to understand what's going on? So that's something that I wish I'd done differently.
Escape Goat Simulator. There you go.
I think the chat has cut out. I cannot hear. Skype having issues.
Can you hear me? Hello, 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 hello.
Okay, we're back.
All right. Yeah, I was just saying Escape Goat Simulator.
I could try that. I'll see what happens. See if I get any emails.
You never know. Well, yeah, I noticed that both Escape Goat and actually Goat Simulator were in a bundle recently.
Are you talking about the Heifer charity bundle thing?
I think so. I don't necessarily remember what exactly it was called.
Yeah, that's the only bundle I'm aware of that we were both in. And yeah, that was just kind of like we'd sent a couple emails back and forth about like maybe doing some sort of event together, and like it was actually Armin's idea to have like, let's figure out a way where goats can help humans, and we'll do that as the charity. So yeah, we got in touch with Heifer, and they set up the website, and we sent them the keys, and yeah, that went on for a few months. I think it's kind of it's not available right now, but they might bring it back at some point.
Are there any thoughts about a Escape Goat 3 at this point, or do you feel like moving on to other projects? I know you've moved on to work on another Soulcaster game, or at least porting over another Soulcaster game, I believe.
Yeah, there is an all-new Soulcaster being worked on, and it's still totally a prototype at this point. The thoughts of Escape Goat 3 now, probably not anytime soon. Like, I love the Escape Goat world, but I think I need to take a break from it and re-enter the Soulcaster world again. I guess I'll probably go to my grave with only ever having like 2 franchises, but if I make like 10 games apiece for them.
It'll work. It'll work. Now, Soulcaster is very different than a Scapegoat, because Soulcaster, even though I haven't played one, I believe they are actually RPGs.
Kind of. They combine a lot of things. So they have RPG elements, but it's kind of it's going to evoke a feeling of dungeon crawling like the original Gauntlet and tower defense, and it's kind of both those things put together. You're wandering through a dungeon, and as this wizard, you cannot attack enemies directly, but you can summon these warriors to attack for you. So it's like your choice of where to position them and using the environment to your advantage. It actually does have a few things in common with a Scapegoat, in that it's like you learn these basic ingredients and then you're kind of given these situations. Also, the levels change a lot. There's a lot of like destructible environments and like morphing of the world as you go through it. Plus, you can summon an ally who does cool stuff for you. So I think that's kind of like, if I have a style of game, it would be a game that like you don't have any way to attack directly, but you can you have allies who can attack for you, like NPC allies, and that's how you succeed.
Soulcaster, is that available on PC, or is that a Xbox game as well?
Both.
So both, they're all on PC and
Yeah.
Xbox.
Soulcaster 1 and 2 are not on Steam yet. They're on Greenlight. I've really not done that much to promote them on Greenlight, so I've just kind of been chilling there. But they are available on my website, on the Humble Store, if you want to check them out.
Now, it's interesting to hear that you're saying they're both on Greenlight, considering both the Scapegoat 1 and 2 are currently on Steam, as well as the fact that Scapegoat 2 was published by Double Fine, so you do have a little bit of publisher support there. I would have thought that you would have been able to put any game that you made immediately onto the Steam Marketplace.
Yeah, some other people asked me about that too, or like some people were actually like really shocked. They're like, you know, have we come to this place where like, you know, everyone has to go through Greenlight? And I don't know actually, because I never really went to my contacts at Steam and said like, I've got this other game series, do you want to put it there? I put it up there to coincide with a Humble Daily deal, to kind of like, I knew that would be the best chance it had to get some votes, because a bunch of people, like, if you get it in Humble and then you want to add it to your Steam library, well, voting for it on Greenlight will help make that happen. So I kind of wanted to see where the level of support was for it just on its own, and that would maybe build a better case for it to Valve. I mean, if it takes forever, if it looks like it's never going to happen, I may go directly there and try and like take that approach. But I'm not like looking for a new project right now to bring all these games to Steam, because once they get greenlit, then it's like okay, I've got to have achievements for them. I've got to, you know, make them compatible with Steam, and it's
Steam trading cards
and the Steam trading cards. I love doing all that stuff, but it's kind of like, oh, I need to put everything else on hold for 3 weeks while that happens. So you could say I'm procrastinating in getting Soulcaster 1 and 2 on Steam.
We actually came across probably one of my favorite sections in the entire game, and that is the Necromouser area, which is actually very reminiscent of what you were saying earlier when you had the ability to have multiple mice characters on the screen at once, because that's actually the ability that the Necromancer thing allows you to do. Yeah,
it in a way is like based on the really early prototyping of the mouse, and I think it's more of a gimmick than anything else. For people who've played through the game, they know that it's only used in a couple rooms, and the reason for that is there's only so many things you can do with 4 mice versus 1. The main thing you're doing is like holding down 4 buttons, or like in this case, you're setting up 4 teleport points. I just kind of couldn't think of very many things to do with the 4 mice. So I wanted it to be kind of like in Super Mario 3, there was Karibo's Shoe, which was just this really fun upgrade that was really thematically cool, but only appeared in one place. And so it's like just this fun thing just for flavor, but it doesn't like create the most interesting puzzles ever.
I think it works out okay for the most part. But I do have to say that I think that this level actually has my favorite track in the entire game. If I had to pick a favorite track, considering there are a lot of really good tracks, is the soundtrack available? I believe the soundtrack's on Steam, isn't it?
The soundtracks are not on Steam; they're on Bandcamp.
Because
So if you
Steam
go to
does have
magicaltimebeing.bandcamp.com.
Steam has been doing some beta testing for some kind of a music player. I do know that much. So, have you thought about moving them over to Steam? Hello? Hello, you still there? Hello, hello? Hello, hello? Hold on here a second. Oh, we have a problem with the Skype call. Alright, let me see if I can quickly try to get this fixed here before we move on. We can redo the call. Are you back? Hello, 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 hello?
Hello.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's a
are
problem
we
there
back?
on Skype. Hello?
Hello. Can
Hi.
you hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. My connection just died.
It's alright, it's alright. Yeah, there was a bit of an issue there on Skype, but what I was saying was, since I know that Steam is kind of working on some sort of a music player thing, have you thought about bringing the soundtracks over to Steam for either of them, having maybe some kind of a bundle with them or anything like that?
I haven't really thought about that. I haven't been keeping up with the latest like music on Steam thing, but that could be cool. I might check that out.
Alright, I believe that there was a question here in chat, so I'm trying to keep track of all the things in chat. Unfortunately, chat is a little bit harder to read today, but if you do have any questions, anybody who wants to ask Ian anything, feel free to put them there in chat, or send them to Ian, through his Twitter, which is @magicaltimebean. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Willful there asked if there's any chance to see a native Vita version as well. As he's saying that it would be good for the D-pad on the Vita. Now, I believe that there actually is a Vita version of Escape Code 2 that is going to be coming around along with the PS4 version.
The Vita version, so everyone asks about this. There's no official Vita version. There hopefully will be someday. Monogame is not operational on Vita just yet, or at least as of a couple months ago when we were putting the project together. So kind of as soon as that works out, then work will begin on the Vita version, because there's definitely demand for it. It'd be cool to do a cross-buy and stuff like that.
All right, because I thought I had heard something about that earlier today, so I just wanted to make sure about that. I've also heard people asking if there would be any plans to move the original Escape Code over to Vita or over to PS4 as well.
Yeah, like I wasn't really expecting there to be a demand for that, but I don't know if there is, then maybe something could be worked out. That would be a whole other porting project, because like there's kind of a significant amount of work to get the game from Windows to PS4, and kind of that would also have to happen for Escape Code 1. So I would just say there's no plans right now to do that, but maybe someday.
All right, interesting. What about for something like Soulcaster?
Well, for Soulcaster 1 and 2, like I would say Steam would be the next thing, and then this is my first PS4 game and it hasn't really even come out yet, so I'm just I'm brand new to that. For the next Soulcaster, that'd be kind of cool. It's currently being developed kind of platform independent or agnostic, so it could work on kind of like any of my games, could work on a PC or a console.
Right. All right. I do not remember how to solve this at all. All right, John, I think we're gonna have to. Let's actually quit out here, and let's quickly... We've hit the hour mark right now, so how many more codes do you have left to give away right now in the Gamer Check? And actually, what we can do right now is we can give away the PS4 code that I currently have for Escape Code 2. Now, when is this game actually fully released on PS4, and what is this price tag going to be?
This comes out on Tuesday, the 21st in North America. Europe will happen soon. We just don't have a firm date for that yet, and it's $9.99 US.
All right, so we're going to do a keyword system here. So anybody who owns a PS4 and would like to win themselves a copy of Escape Goat 2, then can try to enter. Please be sure that you actually own a PS4 before you enter this. Don't enter this if you don't have a PS4. There's no point. This code is only for PS4. If you would like a Steam version of Escape Goat 2, then talk to IndieGamer Chick on Twitter. Her Twitter is at IndieGamerChick. She's given away a bunch of Escape Goat 2 on Steam, as well as Escape Goat 1 on Steam. So, Ian, what should our keyword be?
Keyword?
Yes, what should our one keyword be that people have to type in chat to enter the contest?
And I just have to come up with this right now, and then everyone's going to type it suddenly.
Yeah, pretty much.
How about hashtag goatness awaits?
All right. Okay, it is typed in right now in the keyword. So, anybody who currently owns a PS4 and would like a chance to win Escape Goat 2 for the PS4, type that right there. Hashtag goatness awaits. Type that in chat, and you will be entered in. And I forgot that I am not the. I usually use this system when it's on my own channel. So since this isn't my channel, by putting that in chat, I actually just entered my own drawing.
Hey, you could come away a winner.
If I end up winning, I'll just roll it again. But looks like we have one person who is currently entered. I don't know how many people in chat actually own PS4s. We've got quite a few people here today, though. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes to enter the giveaway before I roll the dice and see who wins. At the moment, we got one guy in, so if nobody else enters, he's going to win it. I'm not cheating into Gamer Chick. I didn't know. I didn't know that it was going to throw me in there. All right. So let's actually get into some of the later levels here by bringing up the other file that I have for Escape Goat 2. There's actually some really interesting mechanics that show up later on in the game. Now, the cool thing that is with this, number one, it looks really freaking awesome. Number two, all these little squares, I believe every square in the stained glass is a level. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, that's one of the things we wanted there to be. It's kind of a spoiler, but whatever. So it's an 11 by 11 map, so it's 121 rooms, and once you get to all the normal levels, you'll just notice that there are these gaps that don't have levels in them. And I was just hoping that people would be kind of puzzled and curious, and probably just want to look online and see if anyone else was wondering about the missing levels. And I wanted it to be kind of a thing that people share information about online. So there are levels there. They're very difficult to find and very, very difficult to beat.
Yeah, I'm noticing here, even though I've played a lot of these early on levels and have played some of the levels that were unlocked after that, such as 4, 6, and so on, haven't gotten that far in any of these because these are really freaking hard. But there are a couple of, like, 1 blocks or 2 blocks here or there that there still isn't a level in that. And is that an area that there's, like, maybe secret hidden levels you have to specifically find?
That's it.
Okay. So it's not just like the other ones where you beat the main batch and then you can come back and play more. You actually have to find, like, a warp zone or something to unlock them.
Yeah, there's a way to find them. There's a great Tim Schafer quote where like on Twitter, he actually tweeted out a screen capture of the entire map filled in except for these missing rooms, and he's like, something tells me there are rooms in these gaps here. He said something like that. But like, yeah, that is exactly the thought and emotion we wanted to create.
That's pretty cool. Was that something that you had to work in when it came to trying to gauge the difficulty of the game? Were those levels that you specifically designed to be very difficult, or were they just levels that you had designed along with the other levels and found out that they were a lot harder than everything else, so you held them off for something special a little bit later?
No, they were chartered to be nightmare levels from the beginning. And I built a couple of them on Twitch doing some dev streaming. So some people actually witnessed them being made. I even took some audience suggestions for themes for the levels.
That's right, I remember that you were doing that. I believe I suggested a Goat Simulator level before I figured out that wasn't any way to actually do that.
I wonder did I come up with something for that? Because there were some weird suggestions that I think I managed to pull something together for.
I don't know. I believe that your comment was that the tongue thing was not supported, so you didn't really know what to do for that. But I do know that a lot of your levels are basically Rube Goldberg machines, and they are really, really complex when it comes to putting them together. So could you take us through maybe a little bit of an overview of what your thought process is when you're putting a level together, as I constantly jump into the same pit over and over again?
Yeah, this was an early level that I actually didn't expect to make it in, just as an aside here, but Randy loved this one so much that he just he urged me to keep it in. So you can offer him thanks for this level's existence in the final product.
Well, this level's interesting because it actually doesn't have a key in it. It's one of the very few levels that you don't have to collect a key before you get to the exit.
Yeah, that little door that you just got to down there, that actually, was a different part of the level. There were, in the first version of this, there were 2 exits in this level, because this was back when there were kind of branching pathways in the game. That's how old this level is. So that little door down there and that gap is kind of a vestige of the old game that I just decided to leave in there for old time's sake.
No, I've sold this level before, but I don't remember what
you had a question that I've completely blanked on.
What's your thought process?
Oh, the process on making a level.
Yeah.
So there are a bunch of starting points. Kind of the main thing is that I built the editor to be as fast as possible, so that levels could be built and modified really easily. That way I wouldn't be too married to each level concept, that if something wasn't working out I could just scrap it, and it wasn't like losing 4 hours of work because it had to be painstakingly edited in some text file or something like that. So that was the key thing, was just being able to throw out tons and tons of levels that weren't working out, or just make changes really easily to them. Because sometimes it's just moving a block one place to the left or something like that makes a humongous difference. In terms of starting levels, I had a few different starting points. One way to get inspiration would be I would pick 2 random gadgets, say we've got wooden blocks and we've got reapers. So what 2 things can these gadgets do? Well, the reapers can burn the wooden blocks. They could also stand on the blocks, and the blocks could get burned out from under them. The goat could have to smash the blocks to have a block fall or smash the wooden blocks to have a stone block fall on the reaper. So I'd kind of come up with some various scenarios just based on a couple of gadgets, and then sketch out on graph paper just little instances of one little chunk of the level, what it might look like, and then put that into the editor and see how I could get that little chunk to work. If it did work, then maybe come up with a couple variations of it and build a larger level around it.
Kind of like Contraption Maker, actually. Something like that.
Yeah, it was actually.
Hello?
Machine, or yes, am I still there?
Oh, okay.
Anything?
You're back.
Yeah.
You're back.
Okay, so yeah, Incredible Machine was another inspiration for this. It's just set everything up, watch it happen. There are a few levels like that. They're kind of like exhibition levels of the physics and the Rube Goldberg-ness of the game. There aren't a ton of them because they just don't make for very fun levels in terms of problem solving or puzzles. They're more fun to just look at.
Right. It's why a lot of early levels were very, very mechanical and things moving around.
Yeah, the early levels, because they could be easier, and it was also important to kind of dazzle newcomers and say, like, look what the game can do. Like, watch all this fun stuff happen.
I think I can't solve this. Maybe? Oh, I could have got it if I was a little bit quicker on that. Dang it. Alright.
This is one of my favorite levels.
You like the hard levels, don't you? You like to torture people.
Yeah, I kind of do. I think the next level is my all-time favorite.
So speaking of levels, though, you were talking earlier about how people have made some interesting ones in the Steam Workshop. Are there any particular ones that are your favorites?
No, I can't really say that yet. I have to take a more comprehensive look and maybe pick some favorites at some point. That's a good idea, though. Like, it's been too long since I've checked them out. But I will say people have come up with real brain-bending puzzles. Like, there's a Japanese puzzle designer, goes by the handle Aaron Puzzle on Twitter, and he, or perhaps she, has developed just the most insane, like, kind of Sokoban style puzzles of, like, moving blocks in just the right order. And there was one, a Scapegoat 1 level that appeared, and I never actually found the solution to it. So there are some levels that are difficult enough puzzles that I cannot solve them.
Is that something that I always like to ask developers who make difficult games? Is like, have you beaten your own game?
I have beaten a Scapegoat 2, yes. Am I the best in the world at it? No. There are a lot of people significantly better than I am. There was the Speedruns Live did a fun race where half the people participating had never played before. So it's called, like, blind racing. And yeah, I came in 11th place. So just for that one event, there were 10 people who did it better than I did.
Somebody posted in chat that the speedrun record is apparently 15 minutes. Just how? Just how in the world am I supposed to do that? That's insane.
So any percent means you can skip one entire level. So the level they always skip is the temple because it seems to take the longest out of the levels that are skippable. And some of the levels you just do the right way to get the fastest time, but for the most part you have to know the shortcuts, and they're insane. You should look up YouTube videos of some level shortcuts. Not to mention that there's kind of a control exploit called the boost jump, which is a way to, it's kind of a single frame timing thing where you can exploit a flaw in the double jump mechanic and get a little extra jump boost, and like maybe get half of a block extra jump height to reach places you shouldn't be able to. It's incredibly hard to execute. Like, you have to practice for hours. I cannot do it reliably.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Well, it was discovered back when the game was in beta, and it could have been patched out, but ZD Wario, he was one of the top speedrunners for Scapegoat 1. He designed the All Intensive Purposes campaign for Scapegoat 1. And he was one of the people I showed an early version of this to. Like, he discovered it within like 1 hour and sent me a YouTube video of, like, look what I can do. And I was about to patch it out of the game, but he's like, no, you must leave this in, because this is, like, speedrunners live for this sort of thing. So I'm like, okay. And yeah, it turned out to be probably a good move, at least for just the speedrunners, because it's so difficult to do. It's not like it has broken the game for casual players, but for people who want to really practice the game, it's given something to shoot for. And yeah, the level you're on now is my all-time favorite one.
I think I almost had it. I almost got this. I almost got it. It's literally right there. This place is called the Graves of Anguish for a reason. There it is! Yeah, unfortunately, I've still yet to beat the base game of Scapegoat 2. I'm really close, but I just haven't got there yet. There were a couple puzzles in the Scapegoat 1 that I was having trouble with as well. But even though it's like I haven't beat it, I still really like the game, and it's still very, very well put together.
Well, thanks so much.
All right, so I've run out of things to talk about at the moment. So, do you want to check your Twitter, see if we have any questions there that you want to answer before we wrap things up completely?
Will Flair asks, are there leaderboards for this game? It'd be interesting to see how fast people clear some of the stages. That is a great question. So in the Steam version, there are achievements, but there are no leaderboards. And the reason for that is that I wanted, well, it's kind of like a long philosophical discussion. And I got this whole philosophy from Bennett Foddy, the guy who made QWOP and other great games. He gave a talk at the Indie Game Summit about like kind of his take on leaderboards and how having worldwide leaderboards where when you complete the game you get compared against everyone else in the world, that can kind of take the wind out of your sails. Like say you have a personal best and it's the best you've ever done and you're really proud of your achievement, well suddenly that's not as cool when you find out that you're number 60,925 in the world.
Right.
So that's the reason he doesn't have leaderboards. Also it's that like when there's no automatic place to share your achievement in the game, people will make their own. They'll post to YouTube and forums, and they take things outside of the game. And that's actually kind of really good for just like not just marketing, but for community building around the game. So that's the main reason why there are no leaderboards in Scapegoat 2.
I was actually about to ask if you were thinking of if you had ever thought about adding some kind of time trial mode or anything like that.
There is an unlockable for a speedrun timer where it doesn't actually grade you, but it's a way to like check your best time and check the actual clock time for a level to just try and improve it by fractions of a second at a time.
We actually have a question here from Indie Gamer Chick in chat, and she says, was there anything ambitious that you had to cut from a Scapegoat 1 or 2? I know you talked about a couple things that you had to cut just because the mechanics weren't working properly.
Yeah, so I'd have to go to a Scapegoat 1 for this, and you can see a YouTube video of an earlier version of the game where it shows what the game could have become. And it started out as an adventure game, almost like a Metroid-style adventure game, where it still was single screen with no scrolling, but if you leave the top, bottom, left, or right of a room, it takes you to an adjacent room, and you can return to rooms you've been in, and you would get power-ups. So the double jump would be something that you earn, and the mouse is something that you earn, and the ability to put the mouse to sleep is another thing you get. So there's this character persistence. Very Symphony of the Night. And after building it and playing around with it, as much as I love those games and love Super Metroid, Symphony of the Night, and the Goonies 2, and that whole style of game, there was one humongous problem with doing that with a puzzle game, which is that it really sucks to backtrack through puzzles that you've already solved. So take any Scapegoat level that's interesting and imagine just coming into it from a different side and then having to either beat it again a different way, or maybe parts of it stay solved to keep a shortcut open, but then why are you backtracking? And so I kind of realized that the only reason backtracking is fun in a Metroid style game is because your character's getting more powerful, because you're getting like more attacks and abilities, and the combat gets easier, and so it's an easier time through the second time through, and new stuff gets opened up. So without any sort of combat in the game, there was just no need for it. And it simplified things a lot to change it to just a linear one level after the other. And when I first did that, I was like, oh, well, I guess this can't be like a good game anymore. I'll have to settle for it being an okay game. But that turned out to be a vastly superior model for a puzzle game, for this particular game.
Right. That's a problem I'm having a little bit with a game that we're going to be covering next week called Gateways, which is a Metroidvania puzzle game. And the problems I'm having with that is the fact that, of course, being a Metroidvania, you have to go throughout the entire area, collecting all the things. But the maps are so massive, it's kind of hard to remember what you need for every single place. And it's kind of hard to figure out what will even do what, which Scapegoat 2 doesn't have quite as many mechanics that Gateways does, but I can definitely see that if you basically make one giant. I guess I could say, what is it, La Mulana? That's another one. That's a Metroidvania puzzle game where it's almost too big of a puzzle with a whole crap ton of other puzzles inside of it that it becomes extremely confusing very easily.
Yeah, Long Milana is a game that I really wanted to dive into, and I played for hours, but I got stuck. Like, I got horribly stuck in that. I'm probably not the only
Everybody
one.
gets stuck in that game at some point in time.
And that was, like, you totally hit the nail on the head. The other reason why I couldn't get it to work was if you've got this character persistence and you're getting new abilities, how do you know when you get to a level whether or not you can beat it? Like, what if you spend 18 hours trying to beat this thing because you can just almost make the final jump, or it's just like seems just barely doable if only you could execute it better. And then you find out later that, like, oh, once you get the magic hat and you can teleport, then it's a piece of cake, and it's impossible without the magic hat, so you wasted a bunch of time. So that's totally a pitfall of, like, having these puzzles in there. There can be these choke points in games like Dark Souls or, you know, Super Metroid, where it's like you need a thing to get past, but it's totally obvious. It's like a blockade. It's not a puzzle where you have a lot of moving parts and then you think about it for a while. It's easy to tell yes or no, I can get through here.
Yeah, so I can definitely say that a linear design is definitely it's a simpler thing to go for when it comes to a puzzle game. I think it really works a lot in Scapegoat's favor for mechanically and just everything. It works really well. And I for one have really enjoyed my time with the game. I have no idea how to finish this level, not even close. But I've really been enjoying my time with both of the games, and I'm glad to hear that they are on their way to the PS4. So, I guess we should finish our drawing here. It looks like there's only one person who entered. So, we'll roll the dice. Oh, look at that. Elky 2001 has won the PS4 key for Scapegoat 2. So, after the stream, I will send you a message, Elyk 2001, and I will send you your key. Let me just check here to make sure that we've covered just about everything before we completely wrap everything up. Backtracking can be used for pure environmental puzzle sense. Yeah, I guess that kind of makes a little bit of sense. It looks like we covered anything. Is there anything specifically you want to talk about or go over before we wrap everything up for today?
There were a couple comments in Twitch. Indie Gamer Chick is berating me for bailing on the IGC Indie Royale bundle, which I'm very sorry about. I'm sure I had a good reason at the time, but my repentance, only goes so far on that. And then there are a couple comments on backtracking in pure puzzle games. I'll definitely have to check out some videos. So it looks like Cry of Fear tackles this, and there might have been another game. Indie Gamer Chick said there was a Japanese-only Lolo game that had explorable world. Like, I definitely want to check this out to see how they handled it, because I was completely stuck. I was kind of new to game design. It was my third game that I'd made, so maybe if I had made like 6 games, I would have been up to the challenge. But at the time, I was like, no, we're making this linear.
Oh, no, don't kill me. I don't know how to get around this guy. Oh, I killed him. Okay. I think I did something wrong there, and I might have done something right there, but... Alright, well, that's interesting. That's definitely interesting. Contacts. Want to throw your contacts out there? Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, Bebo, YouTube, Craigslist, I don't know, whatever. Anything?
I pretty much, Twitter's like my only social media thing. So just at Magical Time Bean on Twitter. I use that occasionally. I check it occasionally. And then, magicaltimebean.com. I blog about stuff there sometimes.
All right, so thank you very much, Ian, for talking to me about Scapegoat 2. I really enjoyed the game. I threw the game in my friggin' awesome indie soundtracks video that I did, so it's in there. If you really like the soundtrack, you guys can check that out. How much is the soundtrack actually available on Bandcamp? I don't think it's completely free.
No. So this was the first time um, that I charged a minimum price. Like my previous three games, I just had to pay what you want, like zero minimum. Um, this is $4, but you can pay more if you love me. The I just wanted to experiment with it. I actually asked Disaster Piece for his opinion on this. He contributed a track to the game, and he sells a lot of stuff on Bandcamp. I think Fez was like a top charting thing when that first came out, and he's always had minimums. He doesn't do
Oh,
stuff a little bit.
Oh, now he's back.
But yeah, he recommended to try it, and I tried it, and it is like better for revenue. When it's $0 minimum, statistically 1 in 10 people pay, and the people who paid seemed to pay around $4. So it's just like, all right, we're just gonna have the people who would pay for it. It's $4, deal with it, and it's done pretty well. I think that's people have considered that a fair price.
One thing I forgot to ask that I do want to cover before we wrap this up is how has it been working with Double Fine, considering this is your first published game? All of your other games were you independently by yourself, but this is actually a full published game through that. Why did you decide to get this game published? Did they offer you that or anything, and how was it working with them?
Yeah, not only is this my first time working with a publisher, but it is their first time being the publisher. They actually don't like that word. They don't like publishers, I think. But we agreed that we would just use that because it's a kind of a blanket term. And it really just came down to them helping to publicize the game. It wasn't funding for development. It wasn't like, they control the IP or anything like that. It was just like an agreement to like just help promote the game. And it was an 11th hour thing. The deal was put together less than a week before launch on PC during GDC, and we shot the infamous Tim Schafer's A Scapegoat promotional video the weekend in between GDC and the launch. That was like written and shot and edited all that weekend, which was just insane.
So, do you plan to continue to work with Double Fine now that you've put one game out with them, or are you heading back to working on things on your own?
Well, I don't think that I would look for a traditional, like, all-inclusive publishing agreement where it's like funding and, like production help and stuff like that. I wouldn't look for that type of publishing deal, but the type of thing that they've done for Scapegoat 2 has been really helpful and really generous. So, like, I would absolutely work with those guys again. They're great.
All right, well, thank you again, Ian, for coming to this Games Matter stream for Scapegoat 2 and talking with us today. Congratulations once again to Illic K2001 for winning your copy of Scapegoat 2 for the PS4. Once this stream ends, I will then send you your copy. And thank everybody for coming out to the stream today. I really appreciate anyone who is in chat, be you talking in chat or just lurking in chat. Anyone who shows up, definitely appreciate. I have been Mega Pie Man. Thank you, Indie Gamer Chick, for letting us do this lovely thing and let me talk to all kinds of developers for all kinds of really awesome games. And I will talk to you guys later.